Welcome to Brain Wellness, the podcast. I'm your host, Mandy NP. Each episode will bring you a new topic or interview related to brain health and wellness as part of my mission to help you on the path to a healthier, happier brain. So, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. My guest today is Dr. Amy Novotny. Dr. Amy founded the PABR Institute with a mission to provide pain, stress, and anxiety relief for those who seek a naturalistic form of treatment when other treatment methods have fallen short. Her unique approach comes from her experience treating in a variety of settings and with a wide range of patient populations over the past 15 years. Her background in orthopedics, sports, geriatrics, balance disorders, nerve injuries, and most recently chronic pain, and influences from coursework at the Postural Restoration Institute gave her the foundation to develop this treatment method to address a wide variety of painful and restrictive conditions. Her methods have helped countless people reduce and eliminate pain, stress, anxiety, orthopedic surgeries, sleep issues, and the need for medications. She co-authored 2 Amazon #1 best-selling books, Don't Quit, Stories of Persistence, Courage, and Faith, and Success Habits of Superachievers, which share her journey on how and why she developed the PABR method. She also co-authored Wall Street Journal bestseller From WTF to OMG with a little LOL, Unpacking Entrepreneurs' Hidden Lessons. I love the title of that one, by the way. Her ability to speak French and Spanish has allowed her to communicate with and help various clients from all around the world, including France, Mexico, Central America, and South America. She has a variety of interests, including running 40 plus marathons, running 10 ultra marathons, including 200 milers, completing an Ironman triathlon, photographing wildlife and landscapes all over the world that has led to several of her images being chosen as photos of the day, most notably National Geographic Your Shot World Top Photo of the Day. And you can visit her photography portfolio, which I will include the link in the show notes. So glad to have you here, Dr. Amy. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Mandy. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm just excited to share and just help your audience if I can. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. So I'm here.
Yeah, I love how we got connected through another guest that I had on the show, and I love when those connections happen and we can find those things that we have in common. And when we first talked about your method and how you treat people, it was really exciting to hear about, and I'm excited to have you on to talk about it with my listeners too, because I think I'm not the only person that would be fascinated to learn about this. So,
Good.
but before we jump into that.
Sure.
Yeah, there was a lot in your bio. It's very impressive, but I always like to hear from my guests, how did you get to where you are right now? What got you to the author, the person that you are right now?
Yeah, so for as long as I can remember, I've just been fascinated by everything, by life. Like, I've always been curious how things work, curious about nature, by traveling, curious by other people speaking other languages. And so I always kind of had a motto, even just when I was a kid, well, why can't I do it just as well as someone else? Or why can't I do it the best? And I know my mom pushed me and always said, do your best. And I probably took that to the excess, but it was never to beat someone else out. It was, can my body physically do this? Do I have the capacity? So, yes, I was competitive, but it was, where could I take myself? What is possible with what I was given? And sometimes, yeah, I did find limits, but sometimes a lot of times I didn't. And so I would just keep pushing further and further. And so that's kind of explains why I've done all of these things. Why I try to get straight A's in school, and I did all the way into my doctorate degree. Then it was, okay, what can I do with myself physically? So got up to 100 miles running. What can I do artistically? And for me, I used to, when I was young, I liked drawing and painting, but then I really got into photography because I loved travel. So I could put those two together and have, a fun activity while I'm traveling. And so I put those together, and then it was, why not submit it to different competitions and see? And when I submit to other competitions, I get to see other photos and then I get to learn. So everything I have done. It's always about what can I learn? What can I grow and develop about myself that will be uncomfortable at first? Because when I was first learning photography, it was frustrating because I could see people taking great photos, but I had no clue how to use a camera and how to change the settings. I could do the artistic part because I had done stuff as a kid, but I didn't know the mechanical part. So that took a little bit of time. So there was a frustration with that. And so I sat in that and then I pushed through it. So that's how it got me to where I'm at. So,
Yeah. And I always love that backstory because it just tells a lot about who you are as a person and why you strive to the level of experience and expertise that you get. So then next question I have is I mentioned the PABR method in the your bio. What exactly is the PABR method?
sure, sure. So PABR, it's PABR. When I was coming up with this, I realized I was working with people in pain and I'm trying to get them relief. And I'm helping them develop an awareness of their nervous system and their body. And I'm using breathing as a main component of all of that. So that came with, so I was pain awareness, breathing relief, PABR. So by default, that's what it came out to be, and that's where we are. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, you have a physical pain, a mental and emotional pain, or even kind of a spiritual pain because it all ties in. And part of my work is realizing that the sympathetic nervous system, which is part of that autonomic nervous system that runs your body kind of in the background, that sympathetic nervous system affects all of our body's organ systems. It affects musculoskeletal, it affects your digestive system, it affects your sleep, your cardiovascular system, endocrine, all of the systems. So I want to get people to learn how to influence and control that nervous system instead of just saying, I have no control over it. And that's really what this power method is about. We're getting you to become aware of your nervous system and how to control it. And we're changing your breathing mechanics and changing your body position to get you out of some kind of pain to get you relief. So it helps with people who are bone on bone arthritic. It helps people with neuromuscular conditions. It helps people with central nervous system conditions like MS. It helps people with insomnia, with panic, because so many of those conditions that we've developed are all related to this autonomic nervous system. And our body physically changes in response to stressors. We know that, we've heard that a lot. Stress kills, stress affects your heart, but I don't think we've always realized that it does affect how your physical body is being held, which affects all those other organ systems. So what we're working on is getting you to sense and feel your body differently, which then has that cascade effect of helping your organs and other systems.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
my on the listeners, we've got a wide variety of people who are healthcare professionals and people who are not. So
Sure.
for the people who are not healthcare professionals, can you break down a little bit of what that autonomic nervous system is? I know
Sure.
I've mentioned it before on episodes, but I think it's been a while. So if we give it a little quick refresher.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when we move our body, if I move my hands right now, I can lift my arms up. That's all voluntary. I can do that. And my brain is telling me to do that. I'm doing that. So right now my heart is beating and my stomach is digesting. So that's part of the autonomic nervous system that's telling those organs to work. So the autonomic nervous system is named autonomic because we have thought that it just runs without us having to tell it to do so. And it does for a lot of things. But there's a component of that nervous system called your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system, though, and even your enteric nervous system. Those three systems make up that autonomic nervous system, and we can influence those. So we know we can influence the enteric nervous system, which is your gut and digestion, by what you put in your mouth. Literally, you can influence it. Now, the nervous system is going to work no matter what you put in your mouth, and it's going to run. So there's a component of it that does its own thing, but we can influence it. Now, the sympathetic nervous system, that's that fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, people pleasing. That's when we are ramping ourselves up and we're putting ourselves in a heightened, high alert state, which can cause us to act very fast or move fast or lift something heavier or fight something off that maybe we wouldn't normally think that we could do in a resting, calm state. And that resting, calm state is our parasympathetic nervous system. It's rest, digest, repose, relax, sleep, those types of activities that ideally we should be in most of our awake and sleeping hours. But our society has pushed us to be into a fight or flight sympathetic state. And what I'm talking about is, can we get you out of that state so you spend more time in the rest, digest, healing state than in the fight, flight state that really doesn't serve us well? It's important. We want to have that ability, but we shouldn't exist in that state. So, yeah.
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 What happens to our brains and our bodies when we're in that fight or flight mode too much?
So our brains basically, our focus, our ability to focus, our ability to think, our ability to have these executive functions just goes down the tubes. So when you get into this fight or flight state, and you can kind of tell because you can only concentrate almost on one thing because you're trying to get yourself out of that state. So let's say I know someone banged my car that's parked in the front of my house. I'm going to be really stressed about that. Okay, they banged my car. I'm working. I can't address it. Does it going to work? Is the engine working? Is it not working? I have to take it somewhere. So now I should be working. I should be talking, having fun on this podcast. But now all of a sudden, my brain is just focused on my car that's sitting out there. And so my ability to have a good emotional connection with you just goes downhill. My body physically will start to tighten up because it's guarding me against some future that I now have to face. My breastbone starts to lift up, my rib cage starts to lift up, and my breathing mechanics change. So now I'm using my head, neck, shoulders, intercostal muscles, and back muscles to breathe instead of my diaphragm. So my whole body is now physically changing, and my brain is shutting off its true capabilities that are going to affect my digestion. I might feel my stomach start to churn. I might need to run to the bathroom to release my bowels. My heart rate kind of goes up a little bit. My blood pressure goes up. So there's a lot of all these physical changes. Hormonally, I'm starting to change. So, and those hormonal changes in my blood then start to affect my brain, which affects the executive functions that are now going down the drain. So my creativity goes away, my ability to attend to tasks go away. And we've all experienced this, but we don't always think about all of these things happening. And it is a situation like this, like let's say my car really was banged up. Hopefully it's not, but let's say it was. That would also give me an opportunity to say, okay, I know that I have to address that something that's stressful, but I can also work at this moment on my nervous system to get it to calm down so I can regain some function so my body's not so affected by that stressor. And that's what I'm working on because a lot of times if I feel a stressor like that or other people, they feel a body pain too because the body starts to change its position. So if as I'm feeling that stressor, if I start working on my breastbone, relaxing down and in, and I feel my rib cage dropping down as I exhale and my belly spills out. Now I'm combating that stressor response and I'm starting to change my nervous system to get it to calm down because as I drop my breastbone down and let my belly spill out, my rib cage starts to support my diaphragm to force my breathing to use my diaphragm to stimulate the vagus nerve to calm me back down, even though I know in my future I'm going to have to deal with that car. So that's what we're working on. We're getting your ability to influence your nervous system to improve so your body does not have the physical repercussions or mental emotional repercussions of our daily stressors, whether there are normal stressors or every once in a while stressors.
Hmm. So I think we talked about this when we first met. So I had my TBI a year and a half ago and
Yeah.
had some autonomic changes with that. Um, do you see do you see that much in your practice with people where you get these autonomic changes from TBI specifically that you can maybe kind of add in briefly?
Yes, so yes, I do see that. And not with TBI, but with speakers as well. You get those autonomic changes, the sweating.
Yeah.
So, and I've experienced that myself. I haven't had a TBI, maybe a little concussions here or there, but nothing like a TBI like you experienced and what some of your listeners have experienced. But part of that is your brain was shaken up a little bit or a lot. So it's developing new neural pathways, it's healing. While you're doing that and you're taking a lot of energy and focusing it on the brain healing, your body is still responding to the fact that your brain is stressed. So your body goes into a fight or flight pattern while your brain is working on healing. So if you can work on getting your body to start to feel calm and you feel that, those different autonomic responses that you're having, sweating or breaking out in sweats in the armpit or other aspects, the bladder all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, I have to go. You can work on calming those down. Because if your brain starts to sense a safety in your body, like from neck down, and you can feel a huge part of your body start to calm, it helps your brain start to calm. And so those triggers that are getting these autonomic responses to happen, they go away. And I've used that in the middle of speaking on stages before. Um, when I used to, long time ago, before I did what I do, I hated speaking. I hated public speaking. And I forced myself to take a public speaking class in college. It was horrible. I got through it. But then part of what I do is helping people calm down. So I said, I got to learn how to speak. I got to face that fear. And so I'm able now to get those autonomic responses to not happen.
Mhm.
Whereas a few years ago, they still did happen. So, yes, you can control it. Once we get your brain to sense that your body is truly calm, and I'm saying really feel it. It's not just, okay, we're gonna blow out Kumbaya and do or even a blowout 444. It's not a rhythm like that. It is, can I really feel my breastbone go in? And you can feel it with your hands too. And then once you feel it drop in with your hands, can you feel it happen internally? Because there's a wave of relaxation that goes through you as your breastbone goes in and the rib cage drops down. Your body just starts to release the muscle contractions that came from emotion. When you do that and you stabilize in that, your brain recognizes it and softens. It's a very peaceful feeling. It's like if you're into nature and you're sitting in front of an ocean or in front of some mountains, you're like, oh, that's what you're achieving in your body. And that's what your brain is feeling when you really get your position of your body to match up with the breathing mechanics to stimulate the vagus nerve to calm you down. Because it's hard to be calm and have an autonomic sweating response at the same time.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do that. I haven't achieved that one yet.
Yeah. Do, do you see the same kind of breathing pattern dysfunctions regardless of diagnosis then? And it just kind of see it across the board?
You do because everyone has this autonomic sympathetic nervous system. Everyone has it. And it's not like that nervous system says, okay, what condition do you have? I'm going to respond this way. What condition do you have? Just like our body doesn't really recognize different types of stressors. It's kind of almost this on-off switch. There's an irritant. Okay, I'm going to respond. And so the responses are similar across the board. The changes in people's breathing mechanics are similar across the board, but there are subtle differences in what is the driver of that change. Let me give you an example. So I'm left-handed and I can use my right hand, but I like my left. So when I'm stressed, my left shoulder lifts up, even though my breastbone and rib cage lifts up. My left shoulder drives that. Now, one of my clients I worked with a little bit ago, her right back drives it. I have another client whose full low back drives it. I have another one whose neck drives it. Those are the things that really tighten up, but the rib cage lifts up because of the stressor. So for me, I know to get myself calm, I have to get the breastbone down, as I explained, and the rib cage down, but then I have to sense my left shoulder relaxing and letting go. And then I have to replace that left shoulder and feel hamstrings, feel part of my shoulder blade, or feel my triceps so that my left shoulder doesn't lift up again through the upper traps to drive this response. So for you, Mandy, it might be something different. So your body, you might feel where you guard and sense that guarding. The excessive part of it might be a different body part, but you will still lift your rib cage and lift your breastbone. That part's consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty sure mine is my traps because anybody that goes behind me, they can like you
Yeah.
could break an egg on my traps. But yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I was going to ask a question and then I lost it. Um, what was the last thing you were just saying?
I was talking about how it's different for different people. So for me, it's my left shoulder. For you, it's your upper traps. So the muscles we use to guard us will impact us, which affects also if you've had trauma, um, TBIs.
Gosh, dang it.
It's
Totally
gone.
lost it. It's gone. It might
It's
come back. I don't know.
okay.
I don't
Yeah, it comes back. You just
know.
let me.
Yeah. So what are some of the um, major things that you help people work through, I guess? I think we
Sure.
kind of mentioned some of them in the bio, anxiety, chronic pain.
Yeah. So I see a lot of people with back pain. It's so common. And the more we overstimulate our back muscles, the back muscles go along the spine. The nervous system that I'm talking about, this fight or flight nervous system, lies along the spine. So the more the back muscles are compressing and holding you and guarding you and moving you, the more your body's going to be in fight or flight mode. So a lot of times you'll see people who have what they call extensor tone or someone who likes to be chest out, shoulders back, suck up your gut. They're going to be more existing in fight or flight mode. They're not going to have the flexibility. They're not going to have the mobility. So back pain is a big one. Knee pain, neck pain, those are big too. Shoulder pain. So in the pain world, those are the big things. In the emotional world, anxiety is a big one right now. People are suffering economically or financially. They're suffering, I would say we're coming out of the pandemic, but still there's an isolation component where people are suffering that way too. So working through anxiety. And if we can get the physical body to feel a difference, that helps with chemical changes in the body or hormonal changes in the body that can help with anxiety. Um, Trauma and PTSD is a big one. Unfortunately, there is a lot of trauma that happens to people, and trauma can be what they say, big T or little t. So big traumas like abuse, um, physical, mental, emotional, sexual, those types of traumas, as well as even smaller trauma, not, I wouldn't say smaller, but they call it smaller T, more of like kind of the neglect. But that still is a big trauma for people, especially those first 7 years of your life where you are learning and developing your subconscious programming. So, what you experience with your caregivers those first 7 years are so critical for how you adapt to adult activities and adult situations. So, helping people with traumas from their past. And we don't go through the traumas unless they want to share them. But what happens is when someone is experiencing some type of trauma or emotion, the muscles contract in order to protect them. So those memories get stored in the body in that sense. And so I often see it in the armpits, the breastbone, the base of the breastbone, the front of the hips, and the low back. So those are areas where we really store emotions and things that have happened to us in the past. So if we can then work on getting you to sense a release of them, that can help you shift out of constantly replaying those traumas in your mind. That said, it can bring up a lot. So when people do feel a release, sometimes they cry, sometimes they shout, sometimes they shift into another personality that they may have developed as a protective mechanism. All of those are possibilities. So I let people know when we do trauma, we have to go slower and we have to get you to feel stable as you're doing that. So, yeah,
Hmm. That sounds like it could be almost a Pandora's box.
it can be.
Yeah.
And it depends on some people's personalities. They want to know every bit of their trauma. So when I'm working with them, I'm not trying to unearth trauma. I'm trying to get them just to let it go and feel stable.
Yeah.
There was a reason their body was holding on to something. And some people, they regret trying to figure out what they all experienced. So instead of reliving that, let's see if we can get the muscles to let go and release so you feel now a different existence in your body.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds, some of what you're describing sounds like somatic workouts that I've heard of descriptions as it went along. And it actually triggered the question that I had earlier because it reminded me of biofeedback. When you're
Mhm.
trying to give that feedback to release a muscle, I did that on my traps years ago to
Okay.
try to release some of that stress because I was holding all of my stress there and it was leading to a lot of headaches and neck pain. And that biofeedback really kind of released that tension for a time. I mean, it always comes back, but it sounds like that combination of biofeedback and somatic workouts just releasing some of that stress. Would you agree? It kind of has parts of that in there.
Kind of. So it is different. And let me see if I can explain a difference. So the reason you use your upper traps is because your body thinks it has to use those upper traps to move your shoulders or to breathe. Okay. So instead, if we get your rib cage to drop down and your breastbone to go in so that your back muscles stop overworking and you learn now how to use your triceps and your deltoids, you won't use your upper traps. So we're doing a whole physical thing to get you to move differently, hold yourself differently, and sense the muscles differently, which is different from biofeedback, which it's not such like a physical thing that we're doing.
Mhm.
But we're actually physically going to have you work on sensing your triceps separately from your upper traps. So often the upper traps work together with the pecs. They guard you. Most people cannot use their triceps without their pecs. We have to get you to do that because once you get your triceps to work without the guarded nature of your pecs, all of a sudden you can lift your arm and your arm is now stable and it's not dependent on your upper traps. None of that can happen if your rib cage is elevated. If your back is overworking, your rib cage will elevate. When your rib cage is elevated, your diaphragm becomes less efficient. You're in a fight or flight pattern, goes both in a respiratory way and in a muscular way. So we are going to physically have you do different activities so you can sense the change, so you use it, which is very different from biofeedback and even just somatic sensing, where you're trying to sense something. We're not just sitting here saying, okay, let's sense the upper traps, sense how they're tight, sense them not be tight. Most people who have tight upper traps, you're a little bit abnormal. Most people can't just sense them and get them to release. Most of the time, the reason for that is because their position is off enough that they can't get it to release. So we have to get the skeletal position to be in the correct, well, position. Get the skeleton to be in the correct position to allow the muscles to release as you change your breathing mechanics so that you feel that release and then you use something else to replace it. So then you don't go back to using it. Does that help?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
That would not be the first time I've been called abnormal either. That was
Abnormal is good.
So how do you do this? Do you do it in person? Can you do this online? How does one go through this?
Right. So it's actually all online. I
Ah,
used to a long time ago, pre-COVID days, I did this in person. And I used to put my hands on people and help them feel these things. There's a couple problems with doing that. One, people liked how that felt, that's a good thing, but they liked how it felt so much that they ignored learning.
mm,
They came to me almost kind of like going to a massage therapist and said, gonna lie here, just do it and make me feel great. Yes, I can do that, but they're not learning. And so they would get up off the table, they would feel fabulous for that day, they would go home, they go to sleep, and then they wake up and they feel bad again. And they wonder why, and it's because their nervous system didn't change. I helped them feel better and I helped change how their nerves inputted to the muscles, but they didn't really change the nervous system that told the muscles what to do. And so when they went to sleep, it came back. So now everything's done online. We do it on Zoom. I work with people all over the world and I coach them in this process to force them to learn. It's had better results. They get a recording, they can keep repeating it, they can practice it. Often, when you do something in person, it's not typically recorded. And so then they're like, I can't really remember exactly what I was supposed to do. Well, with the recording, there's no reason they can't get the same effect, and there's better carryover. Yeah.
that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I could go on and on and on. I think I have so many more questions that I could ask you. For time's sake, I won't ask all of them because, I don't want to give away all of your secrets online here. Do you have any upcoming events or projects that you'd like to share with our listeners?
So right now I'm working on starting up again eventually group coursework. Right now I work with people one-on-one. Um, I do have some video courses out there, but I know people liked group coursework, and so eventually we'll be getting back into a program. I did start one up before I had a little boy, but um, things shifted a little bit once I had a little boy, and so I'll eventually get back into doing group coursework. But right now, the main way to work with me is one-on-one. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. And how can people find you if they want to learn more about just what you do or potentially getting into group or one-on-one work with you?
Absolutely. So the best way is going to the website. So paberinstitute.com, PABR institute.com. You can go there, get tons of information. You can also sign up for a free consultation and we can have a chat and see if it's the correct fit.
Awesome. And I do have your social media links as well. I will put all of those in the show notes so people can click on those and find you so they don't have to write anything down while they're driving if they're listening. Any last things you'd like to share with our listeners before we wrap up here today?
Absolutely. So I would say watch yourself. See how much you're sucking your gut up and in, and start to let that out, especially if you're sitting. Sit back all the way in the chair. Don't sit on the edge of the chair. If you can avoid putting a pillow behind your low back, take it away unless you have some back pain and need it, but let your gut out. Just let it out and see if you can prevent yourself from holding your breath and holding your gut in. It will help you start to feel the effects that your body can have on your nervous system and just start to get you to shift a little bit.
Mhm. I love that. Awesome. I actually was doing that while you were describing
Okay.
it to the
Okay.
listeners. So, perfect. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you and all that you're doing.
Absolutely. You. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to subscribe, like, and share this with others to help me continue on with my mission to help people live healthier, happier lives. Go to www.brainwellnesssolutions.com to see what I'm up to and get links to all the social medias there. See you next time.